Sustainability is all about meeting our needs in a way that isn't at the expense of future generations. I'm the national coordinator of the United Kingdom Without Incineration Network. So our shared vision is of a UK with no incinerators. At the moment, there are too many incinerators, and there are even more that are being built and even more that are being proposed. So one of the reasons that incinerators are convenient, primarily for local authorities, for councils, is that they can get away with doing a lot less sorting, because all different things can go into an incinerator. Obviously not very big things and not very small things, but in between there are all sorts of materials that end up going to an incinerator that, if only they had been better sorted, they could have contributed to the economy.
Us as consumers, do we have a way of knowing when, let's say I buy something and it comes in plastic packaging and I go to recycle it at my own home in my flat in London, do I have a way of knowing if that's going to a landfill or if it's going to be incinerated?
That's an excellent question, Carla. And the answer is not always. Some local authorities are very honest and explain exactly what they do. Others, once again, will use the word greenwash, try to use words to mask the environmental harm that their waste management practices are causing. And so it is often the case that that piece of plastic of it went for incineration. So even though the plastic could be recycled, and part of the economics mean that the very existence of incinerators actually makes it more expensive to recycle, because there's this get out. Much better if incineration was not an option and we're left with either products that can be recycled or reused or composted, or redesigned so that they can be. In other words, if something can't be recycled or reused or composted, then it shouldn't be sold in our shops. So there's responsibility for the householder, for the citizens, but also there's, I would argue, an even greater responsibility for those who are making the profit selling us things that then harm our environment.
So from a young age, most of us have been shown pictures of massive landfills as a sort of symbol of our waste problem, climate change, pollution. Can that really ever be better than burning our waste?
So the way that I would explain it is that landfill is bad, incineration is even worse. So there are all sorts of reasons why landfill is bad. The advantage that landfill has over waste incineration is twofold. One advantage of landfill over incineration is that when you put plastic in the ground, it doesn't rot, which means it doesn't release any greenhouse gases, which means that for the climate, if you have 1 ton of plastic that you can't recycle, it's better to store it, for example, in landfill, than it is to incinerate it, because if it's incinerated, it releases greenhouse gases immediately into the atmosphere. The other advantage of landfill over incineration is that we have a lot of plastic at the moment, more plastic than we need. If we get rid of that plastic, it's not there as a resource for future generations. Whereas if we store that plastic, whether it's in warehouses or whether it's underground, then that is a resource that in the future generations can use to as material for their 3D printers or something else. So landfill preserves resources, whereas incinerators destroy those resources, and landfill stores carbon, whereas incinerators release carbon.
In a way, the communications from these incinerator firms kind of just makes people feel better about their waste that they're producing, because it's saying, as opposed to repair your things or recycle them. I don't know if you live in a council that actually does recycling.
Yes.
Instead, don't feel bad because it's being turned into green energy, but that's not really the case.
Exactly right. And so it removes the incentive to do the right thing, and in reality, it's simply the wrong thing to do. For example, we're talking about incinerators, the operators will talk about energy from waste plants. But what they don't say is that the energy that they are producing relies on people throwing things away. So if a particular community or a particular council only has a limited amount of money to spend on waste management, if they invest that money in education to help people reduce the waste that they produce, if they invest that money in composting facilities and recycling facilities, then there won't be any need for incineration. If they invest the money in incinerators, then there's no money left over for food waste collections, for recycling, for repair workshops, and all the rest of it. So it's getting in the way of better alternatives, but that isn't part of the educational materials produced by the incinerator operators. They just talk up how it produces energy without pointing out that the energy produced from incineration is high carbon and it's simply not sustainable, because obviously burning plastic is not sustainable.
So how exactly are the greenwashing efforts of these waste incinerator firms making their way into schools?
Some of it is actually in the school and some of it is at the incineration facility. So many operators of incinerators invite visitors, including schools, to come, and of course they use it as a marketing opportunity. They pitch to the youngsters about how wonderful their incinerator is, without mentioning the climate harm that those incinerators cause. So there's written material that these incinerator companies produce, and they provide that written material for teachers. And that material links to, for example, videos that make claims about incineration that are not balanced. Even though there's some energy generated through incineration, it's very high carbon energy, especially when it comes to burning plastic. So because the carbon in the plastic combines with the oxygen in the air, burning 1 ton of plastic can release more than 2 tons of CO2. So obviously, from a climate change perspective, incineration is very bad. Also, of course, incineration harms air quality. A lot of people are concerned and are keen to improve air quality. And those living near incinerators have all sorts of complaints about flies, about odors, about noises. So incinerators are bad neighbors. So there's a cultural change, and that's on us. But also there's a requirement really for those who make products and package products to be more sensitive about the environmental harm that the way that they design their products ends up causing. And again, the incinerator is an easy out for manufacturers and designers, because the pressure isn't on them, as it should be, to redesign products to make them more circular.